Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay. Welcome to a place called, well, it's a bit confusing actually what this place is called. Now on the map it's called High Cross, yet I'm standing on Froxfield Cricket Ground and there's a Froxfield prep school behind. So I think Froxfield is kind of the main sort of geographical town around here, but High Cross is the actual place. So anyway, enough of that. So what I've actually come here to do is do another shoe off. Now, since my last shoe off, I've managed to acquire the ASICS Metaracer and also the Adidas Adizero Pro, not the Adios high stack version, but the lower stack version. So I've got 5 shoes on test. I've got the Next Percent, the Alphafly, and also the Endorphin Pro. So hello, just want to give you a bit of a summary of the course. I started in a place called High Cross by the green and checkered dots there. That's the cricket pitch that I ran around in that sort of lighter shaded green area. So I came out of where the cricket ground is, and also Froxfield School with the church opposite, where the green dot, turn left, down a slight hill here, and then it goes all the way up this little country lane here until we actually get to a place called Solwood, which is that green area there. And then we go into Solwood Lane, which is another segment I've got, which is all the way across here, quite a narrow country lane. You can see a soul on that way. And then a short section up this road here called Stoner Hill Road, and then back along to High Cross on High Cross Lane. So as you can see, it's fairly undulating, not much flat in this at all actually, but the gradients aren't too bad. The steepest bit is probably that rise there at the start, which is about 3%, so didn't feel it too much. And then Solwood Lane was a bit up and down, and it had a bit of a down to start with, and then at the end of the segment it rises up, so a bit of a tough finish actually. So let's go and have a look at the shoes. So here are all the shoes. I've got the Adidas Adizero Pros, I've got the ASICS Metaracer, I've got the Saucony Endorphin Pro, I've got the Nike Alphafly, and I've got the Nike Next Percent. So what we're going to do this time, rather than just choose an order, I'm going to call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go on to random.org and literally just select a number from 1 to 5 to be the first shoe, and I'll do it then with 1 to 4 with what's left and see how we go. So here's random.org. I've set up a number between 1 and 5. Let's do generate, and we get number 4. Right, so first of all, we're straight off in the Alphaflies, so I'm going to get a good benchmark. Right, let's get them on. So I was maybe thinking that they would be a good shoe to do last, but we'll get what is the most expensive shoe out of the way first, and see what the benchmark is. Okay, so I've got the Alphaflies on, and here we are standing outside St. Peter's Church. I kind of forgot how bouncy the Alphaflies and how much sort of digging arch support there is in this. Especially on the right foot, I can really feel almost like digging into my arch. Now, I quite like a bit of arch support because I think my arches have collapsed a bit over the years, but this feels really odd. It's almost like someone's like stabbing into it. So maybe on the run it would be okay, but we'll see how we go. One thing I can do is I've forgotten to put my Strava foot put on, so I'll go back and put that on, and we'll get this run going. Okay, so run done in the Alphaflies. Didn't feel the arch support when I was actually running, but it was a bit more sort of up and down that course than I thought. A few little testing little drags, and it's quite humid tonight and I feel quite tired, so I'm making my excuses already. But I was aiming for sort of just see how that one went. I think it turned out to be sort of marathon pace-ish effort, and it was just over 2.5 miles. So a fair effort, about 17 minutes of running, I think, in the end. So what I'm going to do now with the 4 shoes left, I'm going to exclude the Next Percent because that would be too similar a shoe to do first. So and probably the Endorphin Pro as well. So I'm going to do a random number choice between the Adidas Adizero Pro and the ASICS Metaracer to get like a completely contrasting shoe, from a high stack shoe to a lower stack shoe, see what the difference is. So here we are. 1 will be the Adidas and 2 will be the ASICS. I'm generating a number between 1 and 2, so I don't know what this is going to be. And we're going to go for the Adidas. So right, on with the Adidas. So running the Adidas Adizero Pro's done, and boy, I'm feeling absolutely sweaty. It's really muggy tonight, so I'm going to take a little drink. I've had a third of a sip of malt and gel, and then I could find in the car just to get a bit of energy levels up. So I actually managed to do the same time there in the Adizero Pro. In fact, I think it was a few seconds quicker. I was using race and activity to sort of time the effort, but it just felt so different. The Adidas Pros, you can just sort of feel the road with every stride. It was slap, 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 slap. So Although I kind of made the pace, I think my heart rate was higher, but then the heart rate would be higher because I'm just sort of now rather hot. So what I've done now, as the light's fading a bit, I think I may only have time for 2 more runs. So I've now selected the Endorphin Pros to get a bit of a match up between one of the high stack shoes and the lower stack ones. So here they are on foot. And I think then if I feel okay, because I started to feel quite fatigued now, I'll go on to the ASICS Metaracers after this and see if we can get this done before it gets dark. Right, I better get going and see you later. Bye. Okay, run done in the Endorphin Pros. I must say that felt so much nicer on foot after the Adidas Pros. Just so much more sort of like cushion. It's sort of midway between the Alphafly and the Adizeros, which one extreme to the other really, sort of maximum padded cushion on the Alphaflies to sort of like almost like a traditional racer, and quite firm as well. So one of those shoes that actually feels softer just walking about, and when you get going I think the plate then kicks in. Having said that, I've got all those 3 times exactly the same. I think the heart rate's a bit deceptive, such a muggy night, so I'll need to go and analyse the data more, but certainly on a feel basis the Endorphin Pros felt the better of between the Adidas and the Saucony ones. And the Alphafly, because the Alphaflies were first, maybe a bit hard to tell. I need to look at the data more when we get back. Right, so I'm going to do my last run now because it's sort of just hit dusk. So I think I'm able to get one more lap. And I'm also getting rather tired. So I think a 5th lap would be more fatigue based than anything. I've also done so many runs testing the next percent. I kind of know that they're going to shape up well. So I'm interested to get some data on the ASICS Metaracers because this is only my 2nd run in them. I did a sort of almost 10 miles, sort of fairly easy doing my city strides last night through Cobham, a lot of dead ends. Did notice that they're quite nice on foot, nice and light, but certainly a shoe that sort of felt better when I was sort of striding out a bit. So it's interesting to see how these feel and whether they'll feel firmer than the Adidas Pros or a bit more give there. They're certainly going to be the lightest shoe, I think, on test because without the next percent, I think they're about 256 grams. I measured in my UK 12. ASICS I managed to get a 12, not a 13. Not that they actually do a 13 in the Metaracers, it seems. So one of my bugbears, another thing, that they don't do large sizes in all these shoes, but Adidas are as bad. But anyway, so ASICS 12 seems to fit all right. So let's get going and see how I do. See you later. Bye. Hello. So we're all done. I managed to do the ASICS Metaracer in exactly the same time as all the other ones, maybe with slightly more effort on tired feet. Anyway, so the ASICS Metaracers were very similar to the Adidas Pros, I thought. Maybe the ASICS were just slightly more cushioned. And then what I did was I went into the next percent. It was too dark to do the full circuit in the next percent. What I did is I went up the first little rise and then carried on for about 0.6 of a mile, 1k-ish, and then did a U-turn. So just to get a bit of half the distance of the course, to get a bit of a feel, because that bit was a bit more exposed to the open countryside. Whereas I was coming across a bit that was really under trees. I don't think I'd been able to see where I was going. But certainly, you know, of those 5 shoes, 2 were like your low stack, quite firm racers. And then you've got the 2 obviously max cushion next percent, and then the Endorphin Pros kind of between the 2, a bit more I'd say towards the high stack end than the low stack end. And that 3rd one in the middle, the Endorphin Pro, I think that was probably the one that sort of felt like it picked me up the most, because obviously with the 2 Nike ones topping and tailing the runs, it was a bit hard to say just on feet how they felt. But certainly when I put the Endorphin Pros on compared to the lower stack height ones, it just felt somewhat more comfortable and able to cruise at that marathon pace. And especially with the entire legs, it just felt easier to keep the pace going. So it's getting rather late now, and as you can see, it's rather dark. We're just standing on this security light by Froxfield Prep School. Nice place to run, actually. You hardly see a soul. I don't think I got overtaken by maybe 1 car in 5 runs, totaling about 11 miles altogether. So that was rather nice. Right, so I'll get back indoors and I'll have a look at the data later. Thanks for coming along, and see you later then. Bye. Hello, I'm back at home now. It's actually the next day and I've had a chance to analyse all this data and put it into my spreadsheet. So just a reminder of what I did 4 laps of a 2.57 mile course, starting off with the Alphafly, which I chose at random, and then I chose at random between the Adizero Pro and the Metaracer, and the Adizero came up. And then I went in the Endorphin Pro, then the Metaracer, and for the next percent, I literally ran out of daylight. So what I did there
we just basically run almost half the course by running start of the course for about just over half a mile and then running back down again just to get a bit of a feel. So what I did was on the first one, I had a rough intention to do about marathon pace effort, and for that I did 17:37 at 6:51 pace, which I think is almost exactly 3-hour pace, and that gave me an average heart rate of 127 with a max of 138. So on the next 3 ones I then proceeded to try and match that pace exactly, and I used the racing activity feature on the Garmin Forerunner 9545 to help me pace it, which it just shows you in real time whether you're ahead or behind of a previous run, and with that it's actually quite easy to keep it within a few seconds as long as your legs can carry you along. So in the other 3 here, almost to get those exactly the same pace, and then the next percent was just fractionally faster. So what can we see about this? Well, I think the first thing to note, it was quite a warm, muggy evening, although it's been a bit cooler in the UK than it has been. It was still sort of 19, 20 degrees just as it was getting dark. I mean, the pretty low wind didn't really affect me at all. I hardly noticed the wind really. But it was quite humid, so I noticed after the first run I was actually quite sweating a lot, and I actually had quite a lot of time recovery in that one. So I had 15 minutes recovery, mainly because I was fluffing around and doing various bits. And on the other ones, I had less recovery, 9 minutes after the Adizero Pro and 7 minutes after the Endorphin Pro and only 3 minutes after the Metaracer when I did the last run, the next percent. So what can we say about these other runs? Well, in the Adizero Pro, although I managed to run it at the same time as the Alphafly, more or less, the heart rate went up quite a lot, and you would kind of expect that by the fact of heart rate drift on a warm evening, so that's not entirely surprising. Now what's interesting, when I switched over to the Endorphin Pro, I ran exactly the same time with exactly the same heart rate. In fact, if anything, it was fractionally less. I think that's interesting because I think you'd expect, as the time went on in these sort of runs, for that heart rate drift to kick in. And don't forget, after the Adizero Pro, I only had 9 minutes recovery as opposed to 15 minutes after the Alphafly into the Adizero Pro. So I definitely say there, and rather confirmed on foot, that the extra cushioning of the Endorphin Pro compared to the Adizero Pro certainly helped. And although these differences are really subtle, I think you might have noticed that as the time went on. And then when I went back into the Metaracer, I was getting quite tired by then, and it was actually quite a struggle just to keep the pace going. I managed to do it quite well, and if anything, I actually sped up at the end to keep it, but as a result, my average heart rate and my maximum heart rate was higher, which is kind of what I would expect the pattern to be compared to the earlier ones. So you can definitely see quite a dip in heart rate there with the Endorphin Pro. The next percent, previously I've seen like these dips in heart rate when I've put those on. It's a bit hard to tell with this one because I only obviously ran less than half the course, although I did have very little recovery after the Metaracer, only 3 minutes. I literally put the next percent on as quickly as I could and got off because it was almost getting dark by then, so I wanted to get in a bit of a run just to have a bit of comparison. And I did the first bit there, which is the 3% uphill, the first segment. So although the heart rate was lower, as was the maximum, a bit hard to tell whether that really would have carried on because the maximum heart rates would tend to be found in the second half of the lap. So let's have a look at the other data quickly. Well, the powers are all pretty similar, as you might expect, and the air percents are all pretty consistent this time. The net power just takes off the air percent contribution, and those are all pretty similar. I didn't have the stride working on the first one. I had to go and charge it up. That's why there's no data there. Interesting actually that the sort of the power's around 300, so about 10 beats higher than a faster pace I did in Seville for the marathon, which kind of shows you that this course wasn't easy. And I would estimate that these sort of times compared to a flat course probably worth 10 to 15 seconds, minutes per mile. So these times here probably don't reflect sub-3 pace. They reflect a pretty bit quicker effort than that. One thing I thought was really interesting here, that the cadence in the Alphafly was noticeably lower than the other ones, and in fact, if anything, as I got more tired, my cadence went up. So that's interesting. That may show more about me than it does about the shoes. I was also interesting, if you look at the vertical oscillation in the Alphafly, like the amount of bounce you're getting, noticeably higher in that one than the other ones. Ground contact time, using both the Stride and the Garmin measurement of it, which is slightly different, but they all look fairly similar there. So I was bouncing off the ground pretty similarly. Ground contact time balance is all very similar there, and the leg spring stiffness, which is a Stride metric. I've seen that before actually. The further on into the run, the higher the values get. I don't know, it just reflects the fact I'm getting more tired, so I'm not sure I can read too much into that. And then we move on to the breakdown of the segment times, and you can see that I tried to run these as evenly as possible. So this 2 Solwood with the 3% uphill little initial start of the run. And then Salwood Lane was the country lane going acrosswards, a bit up and down. And then High Cross Lane started off sort of mainly downhill, then a bit of a ramp up at the end, but it was pretty much a net zero elevation. So all the maximum heart rates tended to happen towards the end of the run, not just because I was tired, but the fact that it was quite a bit of a rise to get up. And I tried to keep the effort on, even though probably the effective effort was higher. And then the temperatures and wind, as I said, are all pretty similar. And just giving an indication of how many miles I've done in each of these shoes. So I think of all the shoe-offs I've done, this is probably one that is probably the least conclusive. I mean, I think what you have to say here that I was able to run marathon pace in all the shoes, but there was a notable difference between the low stack ones in terms of comfort. The Adizero Pro and the Metaracer, especially the Adizero Pro, I felt like I said in my Strava, slap, slap, slap. I mean, literally every stride you could sort of feel a slapping sound. And you can feel the road. Whereas on the Alphafly and the Endorphin Pro and the X%, you feel like you're just sort of bouncing off the ground more. I think although the actual times came out here fairly similarly, although you might say that there's slightly less effort in the Endorphin Pro when you read it and take account of heart rate drift than the two lower ones. It just sort of felt like if I'd have carried on for more than the 2.5 miles in each of these shoes, then I might have struggled. So I think I perhaps need to do a bit more testing and maybe wear the shoes twice and just maybe have less shoes on test to do a direct comparison. But maybe it's also an element of what you prefer. I mean, I think I've now got used to the X%, and perhaps I'm warming now to the Alphafly. I still think it's a bit heavy, especially on those courses where there's a bit up and down. I felt like even though it's the first run, I wasn't sort of like really firing all cylinders there. Although I was quite tired, so I was actually quite relieved not to have to do the X% fully because I was trying to do almost half marathon effort, maybe a bit more. It was getting quite hard work. So all in all, I'd say that all these, the Endorphin Pro and the Alphafly and the X%, I think them showed themselves to be why they are the top marathon racers. Maybe it's a bit hard for you to sort of see the illustration of why I think these are better for me. I think I need to do more tests to drill this out, especially the Adizero Pro and the Metaracer. Not bad shoes, but ones that you wouldn't necessarily pick for a long marathon. Now, people have said, oh, you might use those to race lesser distances. Well, I'm not really sure why people say that, because they're not any faster than these other shoes that have got more cushioning. And I've used X% to good effect in sort of 15-second sprints through to 1K time trials, mile time trials, 5K time trials, 5-mile time trials, even through to an actual marathon. And I kind of felt that they were the best for me in each of those. So I'm not quite sure why people think that, having a low stack shoe feeling the ground is actually going to make you any faster. But perhaps I'll do another shoe off to see if I can illustrate that. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. And the summary is that I would say that low stack shoes, you can last the pace, but it just feels like more hard work, more your legs are feeling the road in them than the high stack ones, which is actually better between the Adizero and the Metaracer. Well, hard to say, I think, at the moment, which is better out of the three. Alphafly, Endorphin Pro and X% on this test, it's probably hard to tell, but certainly the Endorphin Pro perhaps felt the nicest change in this one. Okay, so I hope you found this interesting and look forward to seeing some comments when we can discuss further down below and look forward to seeing the next one. Okay, bye.